Hi everyone, welcome to the Compounding Academy. Today we're digging into a name that doesn't always scream excitement, but delivers year after year. AutoZone. At first glance, it's an old-school auto parts retailer, but under the hood, there's a compounding machine with enviable fundamentals, a sticky customer base, and a disciplined operating model. This breakdown explores what makes AutoZone tick, and how it continues to outperform in a category that's anything but flashy. Before we get into AutoZone itself, let's take a step back and look at the broader industry. This is a company that sits right at the heart of a massive, often overlooked segment of the US economy, the automotive aftermarket. And it's not just about wrenches and oil filters. This is a structurally important space tied to vehicle usage, maintenance cycles, and consumer behavior. AutoZone doesn't sell new cars. It sells the parts and products that keep existing cars running. And that makes it surprisingly resilient and relevant, especially in an environment where people are holding onto their cars longer than ever. Here's the key industry equation. The average car on US roads is now over 12 years old, and vehicles are getting more complex to repair. That's a perfect setup for AutoZone. As parts wear out and engines get harder to service, more people are handing the job to mechanics, which means a bigger, more reliable pool of professional customers. Put simply, older cars and more complexity, more parts, more repairs, and more growth. This isn't a temporary lift, it's a structural tailwind. The backdrop here is unusually supportive. The average vehicle age in the US keeps ticking higher, now above 12 years, and that's a record. And whether it's do it for me or do it yourself, those aging cars need parts. Add in the rise of online ordering, retail consolidation, and expanding store networks, and you've got multiple long-term tailwinds working in AutoZone's favour. This is a market with both durable demand and structural growth, rare for retail. One of the biggest tailwinds for AutoZone is sitting right there in American driveways. And it's getting older. The average vehicle age in the US has been climbing steadily for 2 decades. As of 2023, it's hit a record high, 13.6 years for passenger cars and 11.8 years for light trucks. The combined average now sits at 12.5 years. Why does this matter? Because older cars break more often. And as cars age out of warranty, the aftermarket kicks in. Whether it's a DIYer fixing their own ride or a professional mechanic sourcing a part, demand flows straight to players like AutoZone. This aging fleet acts like a structural tailwind for the entire auto parts ecosystem. And it's showing no signs of reversing. So where's this all heading? The US automotive aftermarket is projected to cross the $1 trillion mark by 2028, and then keep going. That's everything from brake pads to alternators, sold through retail, wholesale, and online channels. It's a massive growing pie, and AutoZone sits right at the heart of it. What's fueling the growth? A mix of aging vehicles, more complex technology under the hood, and a rising number of miles driven. Throw in higher vehicle prices, keeping people in their cars longer, and you've got a durable setup for long-term demand. This is the backdrop for AutoZone's compounding story. A large growing market where it already has a strong position and plenty of room to run. So now that we've seen the bigger picture, let's focus in on AutoZone. This is a company that's carved out a dominant position in the US aftermarket for car parts. Whether you're a weekend DIYer or a professional mechanic. It's a business built on consistency, scale, and execution. And under the hood, there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. Let's take a closer look. So what does AutoZone actually do? It's the largest US retailer of aftermarket auto parts, with over 6,000 stores. What sets it apart is serving both DIY customers and professionals. The do-it-for-me segment that includes garages and mechanics. That mix gives it steady demand. And with a strong local presence and community ties, AutoZone isn't just a parts supplier. It's a trusted neighbourhood brand, a rare combination of scale and street-level connection. So what's behind AutoZone's long runway for compounding? It starts with scale. Over 6,000 stores gives them real cost leverage in a consolidating market. Then there's the supply chain. In this business, fast and reliable parts delivery is everything. And AutoZone has built one of the best networks out there. Customer service matters too. Whether you're a DIY customer or a busy garage, they aim to solve your problem quickly and keep you coming back. And finally, the breadth of their product range lets them serve a wide mix of customers, from weekend tinkerers to full-time mechanics. It's a recipe that's hard to replicate. AutoZone isn't in a flashy high-growth category, but that's part of its strength. It sells car parts, which are largely non-discretionary. When something breaks, people need a fix, recession or not. That's helped revenues grow steadily at around 7% a year for the past 15 years. This kind of consistency points to a resilient model with real staying power. This is what disciplined capital allocation looks like. Over 3 decades, AutoZone has grown revenue at 10% a year, but earnings per share up more than 45,000% thanks to relentless buybacks and margin expansion. They've shrunk the share count by nearly 90% and kept growing profits along the way. Few companies have executed this well for this long. Margins don't get much steadier than this. AutoZone's gross and operating margins have barely budged in 15 years. A sign of pricing power, tight cost control, and a business model built for consistency. In a sector often exposed to economic swings, this kind of margin stability stands out. We favour companies with a sustained high ROIC, and AutoZone delivers on this. AutoZone's ROIC has consistently hovered around 40 to 50%, which is rare for a retailer. That's a sign of disciplined capital allocation, and they invest just enough to grow while still squeezing exceptional returns from every dollar reinvested. There's some volatility, but the long-term trend is clear. This is a high-return business that knows how to reinvest wisely. This chart shows 2 things. Blue bars equals net debt divided by EBITDA, now at 2.8x, above our preferred ceiling of 2x. That limits flexibility to keep funding buybacks through leverage, which has been a major EPS driver. Red line equals free cash flow as a percent of net income, down to 73%, signalling some pressure on cash conversion. Not a deal breaker, but both metrics are trending in the wrong direction and worth keeping an eye on. Risks to watch. While AutoZone's business has proven durable, there are a few longer-term shifts worth monitoring, in addition to the balance sheet. EV adoption could eat into demand for traditional engine parts over time, although this is likely to be a slow-moving trend. Pure EVs still represent less than 1% of the used car fleet. Improved vehicle durability means cars break down less often, potentially reducing the need for replacement parts. Fewer accidents from self-driving or assistive tech may lower demand for collision-related repairs. None of these are immediate threats, but they could gradually reshape the landscape over the next decade. What to watch? If you're tracking AutoZone, these are the numbers that matter. Organic revenue growth usually sits around 2 to 3%. Nothing explosive, but steady and reliable. Operating margins are stable to slightly improving, showing tight cost control and solid execution. Gross margins stay comfortably above 50%, helped by private label products and scale advantages. Not a rocket ship, but exactly the kind of business that compounds year after year. At Compounding Academy, we score companies across 5 key compounding pillars to assess overall business quality. AutoZone lands a 7.9 out of 10, placing it in the high-quality zone. Here's what stands out. Financial strengths. Free cash flow remains solid, but debt levels are higher than we typically like. It's not a deal breaker, but it does reduce flexibility, especially for buybacks, which have historically driven a lot of shareholder value here. Resilience. The main long-term watch-out is faster EV adoption. Electric vehicles are simpler and need fewer parts, which could shrink demand for traditional auto parts over time. That said, pure EVs still make up less than 1% of the US used car fleet, so this remains a slow-moving risk. Competitive strengths, one of the strongest areas. AutoZone has a durable moat built on scale, private label offerings, and dense store coverage, which all help sustain high and stable margins. Solid across the board, but as always, the devil's in the details. AutoZone is a textbook example of consistent compounding in a resilient niche. It operates in a structurally healthy industry, with aging vehicles and a shift toward do-it-for-me repairs, driving consistent demand. Its network of 6,000 stores combined with supply chain execution and customer service set it apart in a fragmented, complex industry. Two levers that help create real competitive moats. And while there are some things to keep an eye on, like higher debt levels and EV disruption over time, this remains a high-quality compounder in a market that's still growing and consolidating. If you'd like to dive deeper, you can download the full one-pager at compounding-academy.com. It brings everything together, from financial metrics to competitive positioning, in a single snapshot. It also includes our quality score, which reflects our proprietary framework for assessing long-term compounders. And while we don't include valuation in these slides, to keep them timeless, we do update our valuation views regularly, and that's something we reserve for paid subscribers. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to subscribe for more concise takes on high-quality companies. Like and share if you found it useful. It really helps us grow. And for more deep dives, head over to compounding-academy.com.